We're back here on Business Portal. It's your host, Tony Casino, for Trends and Analysis. And for this edition, our topic is the Middle East crisis and constitutional reform. And with us is our guest from Get Real Philippines, none other than Orion Dumdum. So, what is the structure of a parliamentary system?
Well, okay, a parliamentary system, by the name itself, implies that that it is actually the parliament or the legislature that calls the shots.
Okay.
I mean, the reason why we normally call it a parliamentary system versus, say, a presidential system is we are talking about who has the power. So in a presidential system, who has the power? It's the president.
Mm-hmm.
In a parliamentary system, who has the power? It's the parliament.
And the members of the parliament are representative of the people.
Representatives of the people.
Which
representatives
is similar
of
as to what we have here in Congress.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Well, the Senate represents the bigger body politic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why do you take out the big body politic in lieu of the constituents?
Well, what happens with the problem we have with our Senate, at least, is that they are elected at large and they do not represent any real constituencies. Unlike in, say, in the U.S., for example, when you talk about the U.S. or Australia, the system that they have there is they have senates where the senators are actually taken from the states.
Okay, you have this on the slide.
Okay, what I have here on this slide basically shows the evolution, and I showed this last time. The evolution from a absolutist single ruler model to a more representative model at the very end. So as you can see, there is a direction of evolution, that yellow arrow from up to down.
Right.
And you look, and let's look at the left side. That is the traditional / hereditary grouping.
Okay.
From the very top, you have an absolute monarchy, and this is how it was before, long ago. Most countries in the past started off with a very absolute monarchy.
Okay.
So you look at how Britain was before, or you look at Spain or all these other countries.
Most are European.
Most of these European countries and many other countries like the Ottoman Empire, for example, the Sultanate.
Were run by the monarchy.
They were run by a monarchy, an absolute monarch who called all the shots.
Okay.
And then through the years, as they were able to, most of them were successfully able to say, educate their people, improve things. People started clamoring for more rights.
Okay.
And so these people were asking for, hey, we'd like to have more representation. And so because of that, they would end up moving downwards, going from an absolute monarchy, they would move downwards to a semi-absolute monarchy, moderated by a parliament, meaning to say there's always going to be some form of a representation. Like even in an absolute monarchy, there normally is some form of representation. There's always some kind of a council that the absolute monarch will ask questions to. You know, what do the people from your end say?
All right.
And so the evolution of that is that the absolute monarch devolves his powers slowly. Normally, and through history, it happens slowly, so that he starts lessening his own powers and gives more powers to that assembly or that council.
And then moving on to the modern and non-hereditary. This is more like what happened in the United States.
This is what happened in the United States, exactly.
In 1776. Then they liberated themselves from the
British.
From the arms of the monarchy.
Yes.
Okay.
What happened there was they, in England or Britain used to be absolute monarchy long ago. King Alfred the Great, all these other kings, King Henry II, Henry VIII, they were basically absolute monarchs.
Okay.
And then when Queen Elizabeth came, she started to actually give more power to the parliament. So in a way, she was a semi-absolute monarch. Okay, the people in America, many years later on after that, she was starting to send a lot of colonists. Until the time that the British colonists in America became so-called more Americanized, they continued to think that the UK was still run by the monarch, in the same way that Elizabeth was running.
Right.
when they decided to come up with their own system, they decided we are going to still have a similar system, but instead of having a king, we will have a president.
In this diagram that you have here modern and non-hereditary dictatorship, despotism. And under the presidential system, you cited the USA, Philippines, Mexico, and Egypt, Tunisia, and Algeria.
Yes.
And what they turned out of Egypt and Tunisia, is that likely going to happen in Algeria and the Philippines?
Well, that's, I don't know. I mean, it already happened in the Philippines
and
before.
Then from there, they transformed to the parliamentary system. Is that a natural course?
That should normally be the natural course. In the course of development, whenever you get the ordinary people more educated, more more rational, they start thinking more about their rights, they also become more prosperous, then of course they naturally want to have more rights.
Yeah.
And they want to have more representation. And that's normally how it happens.
But on the absolute monarchy, you have Bahrain.
Yes.
Is already encountering the same crisis right now.
Exactly. I will say one thing about Bahrain. You know, the thing about Bahrain is that some websites call it, they call themselves a constitutional monarchy, but it's not really a constitutional monarchy. They, for example, have a their king, Hamad al Khalifa, is actually, they come from the same family as the prime minister. So the prime minister, I forgot his name, Khalifa al Khalifa, is actually is the uncle of the king.
Okay.
So they're all from the same, and many of the ministers of the government are all taken from the Al Khalifa family.
All right.
So you know, it's at the end of the day, it's really an absolute monarchy. But then they just happen to have a council. They have a council and an assembly. They have like a bicameral parliament. Where gripes are also heard.
Yes.
But the people who really call the shots all mostly come from the Al Khalifa family.
That's why Gaddafi, Saif Gaddafi, the son of Muammar Gaddafi, was saying yesterday's news that it is these kings, these monarchs in the Arab states that are just sitting back, watching on television, sipping their coffee, and seeing all these countries collapse.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And I mean, it's an unfortunate thing because most of these, except for Jordan, is a bit more moderated.
Okay.
Okay, but they still have a more powerful monarch. Unlike say in Saudi Arabia, which is really an absolute monarchy. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Okay.
Jordan attempts to be a bit more democratic and a bit more representative. They give more powers to the parliament, although the king, King Abdullah II, still has certain veto rights and certain abilities to initiate a lot of things.
Yes.
And whenever there are major decisions to be made or major, say, summits, you know, international summits, he's the one attending.
Yes. And the clamor among the people protesting, they're saying they want to rid their country of corruption. And having been served by their leader for, say, 30, 40 plus years, that, you know, corruption has already usurped into the system. And they could not get away from it. And now the people are fed up with that and they want to take it more. How long will this go on? Is there any cure? I mean, is the constitutional reform the answer to rid the country from corruption? When in the same manner, we go back to the Philippine context, the People Power of '86, we went through our own constitutional reform.
I would say that there is also a direction of constitutional reform.
Okay.
So what we did in a way was, instead of moving to a more representative model, because the 1973 model was actually without all those, without martial law, without those extra amendments that the late president placed in, the 1973 Constitution would have actually been a very representative model, a very representative system. Unfortunately, we got rid of it. We, in many ways, we backslid into the old system, which is actually much closer to an absolute monarchy. If we remember what the slide looked like, absolute monarchy, semi-absolute monarchy.
Yeah.
On the side, you have dictatorship, and then presidential system.
Can we see the slide again?
Yeah, we can.
Right.
We can show that. As you can see, in the modern and non-hereditary system, you have dictatorship and despotism. That is only at the right side of an absolute monarchy. And the only real difference between an absolute monarchy and the other one is that the absolute monarchy normally derives legitimacy from heredity.
Okay.
That he got it from his father. And it was accepted that way because of tradition. Whereas in the dictatorship or despotism, what gives him legitimacy is probably the gun, the power of the army, or that sort of thing.
Okay.
And now, if you move downwards by one step, the presidential system is really what that is.
Oh.
The presidential. So we were already at a parliamentary system, on paper at least, on paper. And then when we went from the 1973 Constitution to the 1987 Constitution, we actually backslid. We devolved, or how do you say that? Yeah, we degenerated actually in many ways.
Okay.
So constitutional reform itself.
Did we decentralize?
We did not even decentralize because we
devolved, but we did not decentralize.
Oh no, I take that back when I say devolve, because devolve can mean good things.
Yes, yes.
But instead of evolving forward, we sort of slid backwards.
We regressed.
We regressed. That's
Right,
the better term.
Right,
we
right.
regressed. So if you look there, parliamentary system, there are two types. Those are actually towards progress. Those are the better, more evolved ones. But then in 1987, we went back to being a presidential system.
In 1987.
In 1987, we
Right.
went back to being a presidential system.
So breaking away back from, so would our constitutionalists say that the parliamentary system in the country did not work? But as you're saying, not the true nature of the way it was ratified or it was crafted.
Yes, we did not even have a parliamentary system to begin with. So all those people who say, oh, but we were having a parliamentary system under Marcos, if ever they say that, they're totally wrong, because we never had a parliamentary system. We had one on paper, but it never functioned as a parliamentary system because of martial law and because of all those extra amendments.
From 73 to 1986, that's a good 13 years. We've been running a parliamentary system, whether we like it or not. Historically, it happened.
On paper it did.
We
On paper
cannot
it did.
deny that.
Yeah.
And yet, what kind of policies that have been enacted by that parliament that are still in effect to this day?
I'm not sure
For
if
example,
this is
like
still
Batasang Pambansa 881, which is the omnibus election code. Everything was called BP bilang. So prior to that, any decree by the president becomes law.
Yes, that was the way it
Presidential
was.
decree,
Yeah.
all right? And then they say that the Batasan was more of a rubber stamp,
It was really a rubber stamp.
just to justify that there is a constituency that voted in favor of what the policy was.
Yes, yes.
Does constitutional reform really correct this?
Well, it should. I mean, the one thing that we don't have now that was present in the 70s was that they had martial law then. We don't have martial law right now. So we don't have that how do you say this? That monopoly of power in one particular person who'd be able to say, but this is the way I wanted to go, okay? We're not going to be able to have
Let's go
that.
more into details on that, but we have to pause for another break.
Sure.
You're tuning in here on the Business Portal for this segment on Trends Analysis with your host, Tony Casino, and with us is Orion Dumdum on a topic on Middle East crisis and the constitutional reform. Do stay tuned for more information.